This is Southern Cross News with Joe Palmer.
Good evening everyone and welcome to Southern Cross News. The state government is in the midst of a scandal tonight with revelations a minister has developed a relationship with the chief of a department she's responsible for. Minister Sarah Courtney and Dipipwi boss Dr John Whittington are now under investigation to see if they've breached codes of conduct.
The Premier kicking off State Parliament with the revelation one of his key ministers, Sarah Courtney, is now the subject of a Code of Conduct investigation.
Ms Courtney has advised me that she and her head of agency, Dr Whittington, have recently developed a personal relationship.
Dr John Whittington is the Secretary of the Department of Primary Industries and Water, a role which reported directly to the Minister. That Minister has been Ms Courtney. The pair recently pictured here on a trade mission to Asia. In a statement, she says she advised the Premier of the conflict on Sunday and of her wish to stand down pending review outcomes.
Aside from the conflict of interest matter, this is also a sensitive personal matter.
A State Service Code of Conduct review is under consideration for Dr Whittington, while all relevant decisions made by Ms Courtney also under question.
It creates huge uncertainty over decisions that have been made by this minister and whether or not they were made on the basis of independent and impartial advice.
The Ministerial Code of Conduct says they must take reasonable steps to avoid or disclose any material conflict of interest. Despite that, there's calls for disclosure on when the relationship started.
The question is how long this has been occurring between her and her head of department. Did they act appropriately at the time it became a conflict of interest?
And the Premier has committed to providing further information when the review is complete.
This issue is again raising questions about the number of seats in Parliament. Adam Brooks has previously had to relinquish his portfolios due to an email scandal. This means it's now up to the Premier to handle Ms Courtney's responsibilities while an investigation into the relationship is underway.
What this issue points out, though, is the terrible shortage of talent for the Premier to draw on now. The House is too small. There are very few tenable replacements.
Louise Hedger, Southern Cross News.
A coronial inquest into a fatal tree collapse at Margate has heard there was significant political pressure against roadworks to improve safety in the area. The court hearing, the Department of Infrastructure backtracked on its plan to remove dangerous roadside trees as it faced opposition from environmental groups and a local primary school.
The family of Brendan Smith enduring a second day of a coronial inquest into his death. The 43-year-old was killed as a branch fell on his car on the Channel Highway at Margate in 2014, on a day of extreme winds. Today the inquest heard from an Infrastructure Department engineer who managed road upgrades in the area in 2000. He said they were simple upgrades to widen the verge of the road, but became the most political project he's been involved in because it included removing a line of trees. He said the trees weren't in a good condition. There was a lot of rotting around the stump, which wasn't good, so we decided the trees would go. Telling the coroner in the face of community opposition, his manager backtracked on that decision. I assumed he was under enormous political pressure not to cut them down. The court heard from Michael Rowland, a local environmentalist who lobbied against the removal of all of the trees. He said he was particularly concerned because they were old-growth ovata. He denied suggestions in court that he was unwilling to budge, saying, "I believe in conciliation and personally compromise, and I don't believe I would have stood so strongly." This afternoon, the coroner heard from a road inspector who says he travelled that section of the highway twice a week. He said in the lead-up to the incident, he couldn't recall seeing anything out of the ordinary. Mr Smith's family is expected to give a statement to the inquest when it resumes tomorrow. Michael Breen, Southern Cross News.
Italian national Luca Popotto has been sentenced to 2 years, 9 months prison following a car crash in Huonville early last year that killed 21-year-old Alexandro Borchi. The unlicensed driver was over the blood alcohol limit and had taken illicit substances when his car ploughed into a power pole on January 13, driving 72 kilometres an hour in a 60 zone. Popoto pleaded guilty in Hobart's Supreme Court, the judge saying this shaved months off his sentence. The 30-year-old will be able to apply for parole after serving 1.5 years and has been banned from driving for 4 years after release. The federal government has caved into pressure on the GST and will now guarantee no state is worse off under proposed changes. Modelling showed the changes could cost Tasmania up to $248 million if economic conditions worsened. State treasurers ganged up earlier this month to lobby the federal government for a guarantee to be enshrined in law. The federal treasurer says that will now be included, and all states and territories will be better off during the transition period until another review in 2027. Schools around the state could be closed early next Wednesday as the Teachers' Union ramps up its pay dispute. The Australian Education Union says talks have stalled over the government's 2% pay cap. The government insists its offer is fair, while it looks to employ an extra 250 teachers. Stop work rallies are planned in Hobart, Launceston, Devonport, Burnie and St Helens. Tasmania's paramedics say countless lives could be saved if more people are ready to perform CPR when tragedy strikes. More than 30,000 people across the country suffer a cardiac arrest each year, with only 1 in 10 surviving.
Almost as easy as pressing a button.
Deliver shock now. Press the orange button. Shock delivered.
It was a defibrillator similar to this one that saved Brian Doran's life.
Staff were at the gym where I had the heart attack, and they acted quickly, got the defibrillator, which is easy to use, and by the time the ambulance got there, I was conscious.
Paramedics say stories like Brian's highlight just how crucial every minute is after a cardiac arrest. And today they took to the streets, proving anyone can be a hero.
You don't have to be wearing a white shirt to save a life. If you recognise that someone in the community is suffering from a cardiac arrest, or even you have the suspicion that it's a cardiac arrest, the best thing to do is to at least try CPR.
What we teach people is 3 things. Call somebody, mainly the ambulance, push, which is do CPR, and shock, which is use a defibrillator.
Around Australia, only 9% of people survive a cardiac arrest. Sessions like these are about bystanders overcoming the fear of stepping in.
Paramedics say any attempt is a good attempt and could increase the survival rate by up to 3 times.
As for the number of compressions, the ideal timing has traditionally been to the Bee Gees' Stayin' Alive. But paramedics have now changed their tune, recommending a different beat to get the heart started. Sean McComish, Southern Cross News.
Now a look at the day's business and finance news with thanks to Tasplan, your local super fund. The resurgent mining and financial sectors have lifted the Australian share market thanks to stronger commodity prices. The ASX 200 index has risen by 32.8 points. A short time ago, the Australian dollar was trading at 71 US cents and 79.83 Japanese yen.
2 Tassie basketballers are about to get their first taste of international competition. Saya Deans and Zoe Crawford will don the green and gold at the FIBA Oceania Championships, opening the door to even bigger tournaments.
Today, Saya Deans is honing his skills at Elphin Stadium. In December, the point guard will travel to Port Moresby for the biggest break of his basketball career, playing in the Australian under-15 team in the FIBA Oceania Championships.
Still have to play hard and just do my job.
It's a crucial step for the teenager, who aims to play college basketball in the United States.
I wasn't really expecting it. It was fairly late at night and Mark told me, and I was pretty excited just to be able to represent Australia.
Deans didn't grow up with a basketball from the very start. He sought out the sport himself.
Just saw it in a newsletter at school and thought I may as well play, so I was about 8.
He has a good chance of coming home with gold. The Aussies boast the strongest record at the Oceania Championships, and it could lead to even bigger opportunities.
The top 2 teams go to the Asia Cup, and then from that the top 4 teams go to the World Cup.
Tom Johnson, Southern Cross News.
He's been one of the TSL's most exciting players in recent years, but now Launceston's Kelly Mansell is leaving the state in the hopes of furthering his footy. And although it's a long shot, he hasn't given up on his AFL ambitions. Kelly Mansell got a crack in the VFL for Port Melbourne at the age of 21, but it wasn't to be.
I was probably a bit young and immature and didn't understand what was required at that level, and definitely got that in the back of my mind.
After a couple of impressive seasons at Launceston, he's ready to make another leap of faith, signing on with SANFL club Glenelg for 2019, following a heart-to-heart with Blues coach and former Essendon recruit Sam Lonigan.
He sort of said to me, it's one of those things where you can just give it all and then you can look back one day and say, well, at least I had a crack.
And although it would take the season of his life to get the attention of AFL scouts, the goal magnet hasn't written his hopes off just yet, having seen fellow Tasmanian Brodie Myercheck recently playing for a premiership at the highest level after making his AFL debut at 25 years of age.
I'm pretty realistic that I'm 26, I'm not getting any younger, and it's a very far-fetched idea, probably a below 10% chance, but you always keep that in the back of your mind.
And some good news for Tasmanian AFL fans, with North Melbourne signing a deal to move one of its extra home and away games down to Tasmania. The deal will now see 4 matches played at Blunston Arena each season until the current sponsorship deal with the state runs out in 2021. The club's new AFLW team will also run out onto Blunston Arena for the first time in 2019 to coincide with the Roos' 4th AFL game. A century from Alex Doolan has seen the Tasmanian Tigers off to a solid start with the bat in their Sheffield Shield opener against Queensland at the Gabba. Doolan was on fire, smashing 16 fours and 2 sixes before being dismissed for 115. He combined with Bo Webster for a 134-run partnership, with Webster knocking 43 before being trapped LBW. A short time ago, the Tigers were 5 for 240.
Good evening. Campania, our warmest today with 26 degrees. Hobart and Launceston falling just shy of that number. Burnie 18 today and Devonport recorded 20. Temperatures sat between 5 and 10 above average. Flinders Island and Scottsdale 24, Strawn 23, Friendly Beaches 22 with Ouse on 21, St Helens hit 20, Lyawini and Smithton 19, King Island and Low Head 18. A touch of rain today over the west, Cape Grim registering 3 millimetres. A bank of low-level cloud was over our northeast today. More streamed in from the northwest as the day progressed. Now that cloud spiralling around a low to our northwest, with high cloud extending northwards over the eastern states right up to the Gulf. Tomorrow the complex low moves towards Tasmania, the high moves across the Bight as the rest of the mainland falls under the influence of a broad trough. The winds east-northeasterly increasing to 15 to 20 knots and turning southeasterly over the southwest, swells between 2 and 3 metres. A strong wind warning for the northeast from and including Flinders Island to St Helens Point. So the same forecast for everybody tomorrow. This is a first. Hobart, showers and a possible storm, 21, 22 for Geeveston, 21 for Bothwell. Read those same lines again for Launceston, Devonport and Cressy. Temperatures just touching into the 20s, 19 for Devonport. For Burnie tomorrow, showers and a possible storm, 18 the high, 20 for Strawn and 17 for Curry. And a similar situation for the east. St Helens 19, 20 the high for Swansea. Orford a top of 19 degrees. UV peaking at high 7s. On Thursday, showers with the chance of an isolated thunderstorms. On Friday, mainly fine, apart from morning showers over the north and west. Those showers into Saturday as well, but then contracting to the west and far south. Further north, and a sunny 29 in Perth, a shower in Adelaide and Melbourne. Wet weather also forecast for Sydney and Brisbane. And here are the current conditions, mostly cloudy around the state. Hobart 19, 20 in Launceston, 17 in Devonport. Joe, the all-important trade period concludes tomorrow. I've noticed you've been trying a few replacements, but you haven't got rid of me yet.
Nope, but I'll keep trying. Thank you, Murph. That's all from the team for now. Thanks for your company. See you a little later.